Good afternoon and welcome to this special discussion on Tamil Nadu as a destination for advanced manufacturing ecosystem. A lot of us know about what is going on in Asia, what's happening in India, but as you know, India is a fascinating country where each state in the structure of federal politics that we have is a vibrant investment destination as well. And with that backdrop, we're going to be looking at how Tamil Nadu which has a great and terrific history of several decades of being an industrial leader in the country, is moving to the next level by positioning and encouraging advanced manufacturing ecosystems. I'd like to begin by inviting Honorable Minister for Industries, Investment Promotion and Commerce Department, Mr. Tangam Tenarasu, to address us.
Good afternoon to everyone. So I'm extremely glad today to represent Tamil Nadu and lead the delegation to Davos this year. As you all may be aware, this is the first time Tamil Nadu is taking part in this Davos meet. And it is really heartening to welcome all the distinguished guests who have come here, who have honored us to be a part of this program this afternoon. And I'm really grateful for your presence. And in fact, our Chief Minister, Mr. M.K. Stalin, he was very keen to attend this meet, and due to some other unforeseen commitments, he was not able to make it this time, and he has indeed deputed me to represent on his behalf to be with you this morning. Anyway, I would like to, before going to the topic, I would like to give a brief introduction about the state of Tamil Nadu in India. Tamil Nadu is actually economic power of the country, with about the total economy of around $275 billion. And our contribution to the GDP of the country is about 12%, and about $54 billion are being contributed from the manufacturing sector alone. This is something significant that sets the agenda for today's meeting. And with this background, the Tamil Nadu government has got a great goals, and we have set a vision to become a $1 trillion economy by 2030. When our government took power last year, our Chief Minister has set in this goal that we should become a $1 trillion economy by 2030. So in order to reach this goal, the manufacturing sector should contribute to the economy around about $250 billion assets contributions by 2030. And in order to achieve these two goals, to attain the $1 trillion economy by 2030, and also to ensure that we get a contribution of about $250 billion from the manufacturing sector, the Tamil Nadu government is now very keen to attract investments. And also we should also try and provide a skill for our workforce, which is necessary in the given background. The current status, I would say that Tamil Nadu has got a very diversified manufacturing base, right from the auto component engineering, leather industries, textiles and electronics and whatnot. So this gives a very varied background of our manufacturing base. And out of when you take the Fortune 500 companies, out of the 500 companies, about 130 companies are already positioned in Tamil Nadu. And my government is also now in the process of making Tamil Nadu as a manufacturing hub in collaboration with the WEF. And we have already initiated discussions with other companies for advanced manufacturing and undertaking this Industry 4.0 and to ascertain our preparedness in manufacturing. And we are also co-chairing this advanced manufacturing hub to shape up the group to the strategy and preside over the initiatives for the steering committee this year. And coming back to this manufacturing, to grow, as I told, to 200 billion by 2030, then we need to really shift towards the higher value add segments of the value chain today. And this will empower us for the manufacturing sector in Tamil Nadu to integrate itself with the global manufacturing value chains. So in this process, we are also very keen to establish R&D centers and global the centers for excellence. And one key component of this is the MSME sectors, that is micro, small, and medium enterprises. So we find that these are all the key components of the manufacturing ecosystem in Tamil Nadu. So these innovation hubs shall empower the MSME to grow into large industries and in the middle to the long-term benefits. So in order to facilitate this, we have devised incentive plans to encourage our investors to come and invest in our state. So we have got some very interesting incentive packages being developed, and I take this opportunity to invite our investors also to come and invest in Tamil Nadu. And as far as the energy front is also concerned, I would like to say that about our installed capacity, the total installed capacity of the Tamil Nadu in the energy front is about 30 gigawatt, out of which 70 gigawatt comes from the green energy. That is what I should mention, which has to be taken into account. So many companies have evinced keen interest this time to go about with green energy and all. So Tamil Nadu is now very keen to develop our wind power potential, which is readily available. Many companies, when we were talking here in Davos, they have also evinced keen interest in this regard. So with these few points for your thought, I would like to conclude my opening remarks. Would like to share the steps which I have already mentioned to you. I hope you will find it interesting. And with these remarks, I now would like to hand over the proceedings to the moderator to take it further forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. It's very, very heartening to know about what's happening in Tamil Nadu, and you were very concise and compact, and a good story can be told in 3 minutes. You don't need 3 hours. So I think that's a great achievement. I'm going to, before we begin the panel, I think we must understand what we are going to be achieving here. It's also to get a sense for Tamil Nadu to understand what's happening. There are examples and experiences of companies already working in Tamil Nadu. We'll share some of those stories and anecdotes. And most importantly, I think the objective is also to look at what can be done to improve the ecosystem, what must be done in a collaborative fashion between the private sector, global players, and the government and regulators to ensure that the objective that the Minister has very lucidly pointed out is achieved in the shortest possible time, keeping in mind the fact that we have to take care of the society and improve the quality of life of the citizens of Tamil Nadu as well. I'm going to invite now Professor Jochen Menkes, Professor at the University of Zurich and University of Cambridge, to give us an overview about advanced manufacturing system and give us a larger perspective on where things are, and therefore we could learn and how we could identify the right systems for us. Professor, please join us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, dear Minister Tanarasu. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with you today and to share some of the insights we've obtained at the University of Zurich from our work in the Center for Leadership in the Future of Work. And when we talk about the future of work, we often focus on technology and tech-related skills. This is important, but today I also want to focus on people. I suggest that we need to keep an eye on what we do with people as we progress towards our future, and that in order to build an advanced manufacturing ecosystem for sustainable growth, we need to focus just as much on people as we do on machines and technology. And that, of course, means that we not only focus on the development of the technical and digital skills that we surely will need, but that we at the same time also foster the people skills that are necessary to succeed in the future of work. And one of them is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and reason with and regulate your own and others' emotions. Decades of research have shown that emotions matter for almost everything that business leaders care about: performance, creativity, absenteeism, motivation, even customer satisfaction. And executives too agree to that. We did a study of 120 chief people officers in 2021. And we asked them whether emotions matter, and 70% actually did agree with the statement that they matter for productivity and performance. And more than 50 agreed that they relate to how well we are with respect to creativity and innovation. And of course, emotional intelligence will become ever more important as we progress towards our future, and we are looking for leaders to be empathetic, and we're looking to do things with our heart as those things that we used to do with our hands and our heads are being taken over by machines, by automation, and by artificial intelligence. Now here I'm preaching to the converted, actually. A 2019 survey from Cape Gemini Research Institute has already shown that in India, 95% of executives do believe that emotional intelligence will become a must-have as artificial intelligence and automation replaces routine tasks. Now compare that to 82% in the US and just 53% in my home country, Germany. Right? So the recognition is clearly there. And perhaps as a result of that, India has done exceptionally well at integrating emotional intelligence in training in schools. India's national education policy has recognized the importance of teaching social and emotional skills as part of the national education curriculum, and in 2020 included it as key tools in aiding, and I quote, to develop good human beings capable of rational thought and action and possessing compassion and empathy. Now, the challenge ahead, however, is what I call to create emotionally intelligent organizations and businesses and factories, indeed. Places, therefore, where people can use and are perhaps even encouraged and rewarded for their emotional intelligence. For now, we tend to treat emotional intelligence as an individual ability that you and I and everyone in this room possesses to some extent. But I believe we need to rethink emotional intelligence as a capability that distinguishes the workplace as a whole. And too many organizations are taking on what has been the past, enabling cultures and structures that essentially are built to reduce or eliminate emotions. When we know now that they're the drivers of our performance, of our creativity, and thus we need to find ways of bringing them into our organizations and leveraging them for competing and succeeding in the future of work. We therefore need to develop organizations to have the capacity to recognize, reason with, and regulate employees' feelings, all the while respecting their privacy. For example, to recognize emotions, organizations can conduct regular anonymous surveys asking how employees feel at work, and for regulating emotions, organizations can give employees more autonomy and responsibility to co-create the kind of emotions that they wish to feel in their teams. And indeed, in a research study that we did ourselves with 160 companies and 24,000 respondents, we found that decentralized businesses, autonomous units, feel happier than more centralized entities. Now, for advanced manufacturing ecosystem, these insights mean that in order to grow sustainably, people need to get trained on both the technical and the emotional skills, and that we need to invest just as much effort and energy and research capacity in product and process innovation as we also do in people innovation, in order to find novel and importantly scalable solutions for how employees can feel, do, and therefore ultimately be their best at work. Now let me conclude by saying that in 2021 we also conducted a worldwide survey across 35 countries with more than 18,000 respondents asking how optimistic people feel about the future of work. And they had to respond on a scale from 0, for not optimistic at all, to 20 for very optimistic. And it turns out India came out as one of the most optimistic countries on earth, scoring 17 out of 20 points, showing how optimistic the country as a whole is towards what's ahead. Tamil Nadu, of course, has the best possible foundations to build on that, and with the openness of executives in India to recognize the importance of emotional intelligence and the education system now featuring emotional intelligence as a key element, I foresee a very bright future for a thriving manufacturing ecosystem ready to adapt to whatever the future might hold. Thank you very much.
I like the fact that we are very optimistic, but we are also going to be very realistic because we are achieving a lot of milestones in the real world. I'd like to begin a conversation amongst our domain experts and industry leaders. I'm going to invite Dr. Barbara Frey to share some thoughts. Barbara is also a PhD in electrical machines and a global leader at Schneider. Barbara, in terms of your experience and Schneider's experience in India, can you share some ideas about what you have learned, what has been the experience?
Yes, of course. Maybe I'll really start introducing Schneider Electric globally. That shows then you also how important India is for us. So as Schneider Electric, we are in energy management and industrial automation. So we deliver components, solutions to those industries. And we have about 140,000 employees worldwide, very balanced. And sustainability and people is really at the core of what we are doing since more than 20 years. And that's why for us, advanced manufacturing is a very important mean to sustainability, in the sense that whatever factory goes and becomes a smart factory, we call them, usually is more competitive afterwards and can provide also a more sustainable job for our workforce there. So that's why advanced manufacturing is part of our sustainability journey. So when we now come to India, India for Schneider Electric is the third largest market after US and China. And we became relatively large in the last 3 years through an acquisition of Larsen & Toubro, the energy and automation part. And today we are about 33,000 employees there. So when you compare it now to the 140,000, it's quite a substantial amount in India. And out of those, we have about 4,400 R&D engineers, which is clearly critical for us, for the global business, and then over 30 manufacturing sites. When we drill now further into the regions, we have also a big site in Chennai, and it's producing breakers. And it's a quite diverse population we have there. 65% are females, 35% males, which is an unusual mix for our factories. And over 70% what is produced there is exported everywhere in the world. So it's really a manufacturing place where we produce products which are globally accepted and sold. It's also a place where we have invested quite a lot of money. It's over 14 million euro up to now in the last 5 years. And we want to invest another 14 million euro to expand it. So there is a big trust that this is also a good place to make investments. And what were those investments we have done in the last few years? As I was saying before, we have a program of smart factories. Smart factories means we are applying the solutions that we also sell to our customers, we apply in our factories. And it's not like this that the factory just can come and say, I want now to be a smart factory. No, it has to be very much driven by the shop floor people themselves, that they want to implement this. They also have to fulfill certain performance KPIs. So if the quality is not right, if the safety behavior is not right, if the productivity to a certain extent is not right, they cannot really apply for it. So many things have to be fulfilled to then go with the journey of being a smart factory. And what we did then, we started to implement different modules. So you start with 3D printing, there is real-time alerts for critical machines, we have predictive maintenance, and today 80% of the processes are automated, much more productive than before. So it was a highly motivating thing for our employees there. They are very proud, and we are also very proud to show it to our customers. So each of our smart factories, of course, is a showroom for our customer to tell them, hey, look, we eat our own food, and this is how you can really apply it. And I think the motivation was regarding specifically Industry 4.0. We also had, of course, R&D engineers from India, which were involved there. We have then also shared those best practice among the other smart factories worldwide. And really, again, I would like to emphasize there was a strong focus on sustainability, which is really productivity. We have minimum idle time now of our equipment there, and then also an optimal use of green energy. So we have reduced the CO2 emissions by 30% by also installing a power management system, which is optimizing then the production with the availability of green power, mainly solar. So very positive experience. And when I asked my team there, so what should I bring? What could be done better? Or what could have gone better? They said, yeah, not much, but the main message is, in principle, we would like to have a stronger industrial policy, which involves also electrics, components like a breaker, semiconductors, that's really required to become a strong manufacturing footprint. So as you might know, the geopolitical situation has not become easier. The more we can source locally, the better. And then, of course, which is on top of the agenda always, is the education. the better the education, the more aligned to the industry, and specifically to the Industry 4.0 needs, which is software, but also hardware, chips knowledge, and these kind of things, really critical to be successful. So overall, a very positive experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. I think it's very interesting that we are talking about automation and skilling of people in the same breath, because sometimes it is also always interpreted that automation is at the cost of people. But in India, we are developing a model where automation and people skilling can really work together, because if you don't do that, automation will not find the consumers and the customers to sell products to. It's really very fundamental issues. But I think the other point you made, and we can discuss this later, is the geopolitics of logistics and value chain means that India is in a very good position. And therefore, Tamil Nadu as the focus area for bringing manufacturing for companies who want to move away from countries where they are not very comfortable with, I think is a great opportunity for us to look at. I'm going to come to Maria now and ask her to share her thoughts. I think the focus on decarbonization is very critical, Maria. When we talk of climate change, a country of more than 1.3 billion has to now grow in a way better than what the West did. The West grew at a high cost to environment. The emerging economies like India have to learn from those mistakes, and perhaps companies like yours can teach us how to.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I think, so let me tell you what I do, and then I'll just point it out 3 main topics that I think it's important to discuss. So we are a decarbonization intelligence platform. We help corporations to find solutions for decarbonization. We have customers like Toshiba, Siemens that are very much in the manufacturing space, but also customers like ArcelorMittal or steel producers, mining producers that are a little bit upstream on the value chain of the manufacturing systems. And yeah, I think it's very, so the first point that I would like to make is related to the public-private partnerships that the minister is providing for the Tamil Nadu location, which is very much important to develop not only the industry and the country itself, but the sector. But I don't think we can do this at the cost and expense of the social and the environmental costs, right? It's very important to drive economic growth and development, but the point that the doctor also mentioned about the social impact and the environmental impact of this economic growth needs to be considered. So, and this is the second point. And the third point, I think, is we do live in a physical world, and we do need to focus on hardware and building materials and things, but there are so many opportunities for software as well, and automating or understanding where the biggest impacts around social and environmental are associated with this kind of production, and this kind of investments are super important. So I just want to emphasize these 3 points. I think we're going to deep dive into all of this conversation. So yeah, I'll leave it for now.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'd like to come to Paul, to a state like Tamil Nadu. Can you share some experiences?
Absolutely, yeah. So let me quickly explain what Flex does. We are an electronic manufacturing company. We produce products in automotive, medical, and so on. We have about 170,000 people, and we strive to do products that improve the world. Tamil Nadu is a very important location for us. Actually, we have 2 locations. We have a manufacturing location with about 7,000 people, and we have a shared service location with about 3,000 people. But also, it's an important country and state for us, because our CEO, who joined us 3 years ago, is originally from Tamil Nadu, so she also has a very close relationship with the state. What we see in Tamil Nadu is we have a very high-tech operation here to produce products in the lifestyle space, in the automotive space, and in infrastructure and communications. And at the same time, we have this shared service center that is providing services for the whole world. And we do the traditional services like finance or procurement, but we do also a lot in smart manufacturing and high-tech manufacturing. So for example, for our advanced production lines that 760 lines that do SMD components that go into cell phones and automotive products and so on. All the programming of those lines comes out of our Chennai Shared Service Center. Same time, we have there our center that is doing all the environmental data management. So making sure that we have the right bill of material, the right components for all the products for our customers worldwide. And for example, we comply with conflict mineral laws and with a reduction of hazardous substances. So Chennai is a great experience for us. We are well tied into the community. We proud ourselves that we have, for example, lines that we run with people with hearing impairment, and that creates the connection in the community that our people love to work there, and also the whole company loves to work there. I spent quite a time in Chennai when we had a recent ramp 3 years ago, and we ended up doing cooking competitions and all the good things, and it created a climate in the company. If I called one of my 9,000 engineers today and say, I need support in Chennai, he's probably in the taxi to the airport before I hang up the phone, yeah? And that's the spirit and the mindset and the inclusion that you need for a center to thrive, especially when you go into a road of advanced manufacturing. There's also a few things that are growth pains, right? Whoever, I think many of you have probably experienced rush hour in Chennai, yeah, can be a little bit tricky. We have to transport steel goods, so the infrastructure needs to grow with the growth of high-state manufacturing. And the other part, Barbara mentioned already, is how can we go upstream and ensure that we also have a local supply chain around high-tech components, but also lower-tech components like plastic components, metal components, or so that go into the assembly up then to semiconductors. But in general, a great experience. We really like to partner with the Tamil Nadu government and with our local teams, and we are very optimistic for the future growth.
Thank you, Paul. I think one clear message is that Tamil Nadu has great potential, it has a great track record, but it also now has to look at how it is the center not just for Chennai, not just for Tamil Nadu, not just for India, but for the region. And therefore, to ensure that the next few years, all the obstacles you have moving at scale, investing in infrastructure, which will ensure that companies like yours can bring in more and scale up operations is going to be absolutely critical, because if you're optimistic, then optimism has to again be rooted in reality, and that reality has to continue to improve to ensure that the potential is reached. It's very interesting actually, not just advanced manufacturing. Many of you may not know, but Chennai also has several robots in restaurants and kitchens as well. So if you go to some of the restaurants, you will find the robots are serving food. So it's quite actually not just in the manufacturing field, but the wonderful lunch that you're enjoying right now. We are not. We will have it later. But that wonderful lunch could be served by robots. So there is a cultural appreciation of technology in so many parts of Tamil Nadu and Chennai that it makes the adoption so much easier. I'm going to now turn to Ian Cronin, and the best line about his profile that I was reading about is that he wants to leave this world better than he found it, right? And I think that's a great objective for all of us as well, Ian. But the fact is that as the head of the Hub for Advanced Manufacturing, you have a visibility on some of the best advanced technologies which are available across the world. From your perspective, Ian, what do you think will be relevant for an emerging economy like India, for a destination like Tamil Nadu?
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's a pleasure to be here. I think there's a few things, and I can share some of the things we're hearing in the conversations from all the leaders so far this week. For some background, I help lead the Advanced Manufacturing Value Chains work with the World Economic Forum. And our job is to really try to understand what are the challenges that the leaders like Barbara and Paul are seeing, and where do we still need to fill in the gaps? Where can we collaborate to try to address those, and not just identify the challenges, but or even the potential solutions, but the how. How do we advance and really get there? And so I think to answer your question, there's probably 4 things that I've really heard consistently so far over this week. First of all, resilience is top of mind. Everybody, it was top of mind during the pandemic. It's still top of mind for a number of other reasons. And I think that how we actually build resilience and needing the public-private collaborations that we've already sort of started to discuss is going to be really critical. The second thing is on workforce, and I think we had some great discussions already on sort of everything that goes into that. It's also about mental health. It's about how we enable people to have emotional intelligence and as we do adopt technologies. And then sort of the third main piece here is around sustainability. I think sustainability, again, Maria already started to touch on this, but it's not just about we need to make a commitment. People are lacking a roadmap to achieving this. And I think these are where these public-private collaborations are really critical, where we can learn from global leaders like Schneider Electric and Flex that are actually really pushing the envelope on what's possible. And not just because we made a commitment and we want to be sustainable, but because, and we were speaking about this earlier, there's an ROI for this. There's a good business reason to do this, but people need to understand that. They need to understand, how did you go through that process? How did you understand the ROI? And then the fourth piece is what you originally asked me, is on technology. So I think the thing that we can do, and the conversations on ecosystems, but we already have amazing leadership in the region from the ministry, from guidance. It was mentioned that Ms. Kulkarni is chairing the Global Network of Advanced Manufacturing Hubs, but starting there, recognizing that we need to create new pathways to connect, understand what other people are doing, and leverage that to take the SME community, to take the large players and get them to address some of these challenges. I mean, you actually mentioned the investment in wind farms. I think you have major commitments that these companies are making around sustainability, but if we don't have sort of an ecosystem that enables them to achieve those, whether that's through green energy or sort of sustainable local sourcing, then we're gonna fall short, or we're not gonna move fast enough. And so these collaborations are really critical. And I think this is the beginning of something really fantastic in the region.
Thank you, Ian. I think that's another very optimistic note that you strike. I'm going to now request Mr. S. Krishnan, he's the Additional Chief Secretary in the Government of Tamil Nadu, to share some thoughts. And I think what we have heard, Krishnan, is also that it's very good, it's terrific right now. How can we make it better? Because, perfection can always be improved upon, right? So if Tamil Nadu is already ahead of the curve, we have to make sure that the distance is even further ahead. How do you ensure that you're planning for the future? One of the challenges in India, in various state governments, has been that we don't think long term. And perhaps that, Krishnan, is something that I'm sure many investors are asking you to.
Thank you very much, and I thank the panel for their very kind words about Tamil Nadu. And like you mentioned, one of the issues that you end up with when people praise you is that the expectations rise. You're expected to do it again, and you're expected to do it time and again.
And better.
And better. So that, I think, is a challenge that we take up. It's been a satisfying journey. It's a tribute to people who go before you in terms of what they have managed to put together. But it's also equally important that you need to sustain it in a number of ways and keep it going forward. And Professor spoke about the people focus, and I think the most important thing about our government and what we plan our industrial policy around, it's all about people. I mean, the industrial policy is meant for people. It's meant to create jobs. It's meant to create better quality jobs for people. We have a population right now in Tamil Nadu where our gross enrollment ratio in higher education is actually currently higher than that of the United States. It's 53%. And it's twice the national average, so which means that we have more highly educated people who are looking for better jobs. And the challenge is what we need to meet, and their expectations is what we need to meet, and which is why this entire focus on advanced manufacturing ecosystems, because that's when they get jobs which meet their aspirations. And that's how you maintain their emotional intelligence quotient up, and they're able to do something really meaningful. And we are also a state which combines this whole notion of startups and entrepreneurship alongside as a meaningful thing that people want to do so that they can give more jobs to others, and again, meaningful and significant jobs. So that's an important part of the way the state looks at its industrial policy and why we think it's important to look at these aspects. An important point also got made, and I'm amazed to hear that Schneider's facility also has 70% women I went to a few factory floors which actually had 90% women, and I left wondering, where are all the men? You know, where, what are they up to? But many factory floors in Tamil Nadu actually have a very large proportion of women who work there. You mentioned about, industrial policy needing to focus on industrial issues, on electrical industry, semiconductor, and so on. This is a very key focus for Tamil Nadu. It reflects on 2 or 3 things. I think this entire summit, and you made this point in terms of resilience and sustainability of the manufacturing ecosystem, which means that you need to have alternate locations where you manufacture, you need to have supply chains which are resilient, and global supply chains need to diversify. And in that sense, Tamil Nadu probably offers the best opportunity to actually diversify and come in. And in this critical area of input, particularly semiconductors, we have a problem even within the state. We are the largest automotive manufacturing center in India and probably all of South Asia. We export a large number of cars. But major manufacturers there are telling us that their production lines and their assembly lines are almost lying idle because they don't have enough chips. Everything else is available. There aren't enough chips to go into the cars. So that is something that we need to work towards. The point was made about education and skilling. Absolutely top priority. I already mentioned about the 53% higher education, but we also recognize that alone is not enough. They need to be skilled, and they need to be prepared to work at various levels in the value chain. Our Chief Minister launched a program recently called the Nan Mudalvan scheme, which is I am a leader. I work for myself, and I find meaningful jobs which fit my skill profile and my abilities. So that is something in terms of equally addressing the emotional quotient of the workers and making sure that they are there. Likewise, I mean, infrastructure and transport infrastructure is something which I think is a constant criticality. Companies we talk to nowadays, Flex is being kind to us, but companies we talk to nowadays says 2 hours from the time that the production is completed on the factory floor, I need my product to be in the air. So, I mean, there are a whole range of challenges we need to meet. There are traffic snarls we have to get by. We have to get by customs. We have to get by various other man-made barriers to see that we get the outputs out in time. That's how supply chains work. And I think both in terms of ports, airports, and each one of these areas, it's something that we'd like to focus in. And I'm very glad that this point on local supply chains and components being sourced more locally was also brought up. I think equally we are keen on this. We don't want to be just an assembly location where the labor component is what comes in. We really want to be in the production line of the components too, and that's equally critical. And many of the companies present here, present in Davos at this point in time, I think reflect on that, and we need to work towards that. When this point is made on resilience, and I think developing Chennai and Tamil Nadu as an alternate advanced manufacturing hub is important for resilience across the globe, literally, in addition to India. But I think we recognize this point of resilience from 2 angles. I mean, we've had floods and we've had issues of that kind. So how do we, from the climate perspective and the climate change perspective, how do you make Chennai and Tamil Nadu more resilient to and less susceptible to extreme weather conditions is something that we are constantly working on. We have a World Bank project with that. It's one-of-a-kind project called the Chennai City Partnership, which is designed about addressing all these issues of resilience for the city. Equally, I think during the period of COVID, when supply chains were closed down all over the world, Tamil Nadu did something exceptional in terms of keeping factories working. And I chaired that committee, and we worked with all the industry associations and every other agency to make sure that factories continue to function. And many employers were later very grateful, saying at least they could keep their factories in Chennai and in Tamil Nadu running even through the most stiff lockdown that came up. And I think it made a significant difference. And we were probably the only state in India which escaped a complete downturn in the economy. That year, we grew by 2%. Most of India had negative growth of about 8.5%, whereas Tamil Nadu actually grew by 2%. Some of it speaks to the resilience and speaks to the attention to the resilience aspect. I spoke about the workforce, but let me come to technology, and I think this is the key element here. Technology is important not for its own sake, but is important for the sake of the people that the government serves. They need to get the best out of technology in the way that it serves them, and also in the way that it serves the way that they do their work, so that they're able to apply it and work in far better conditions. We understand that in certain cases, automation tends to replace human effort, but I think used smartly, it can use skills of a different order, and it can substantially enhance productivity and incomes. And that is the direction we really want to take the state in. And the ambition of a $1 trillion economy, which our minister highlighted, which is our chief minister's goal by 2030, is really to be achieved by enhancing this kind of productivity and using our skilled workforce to the extent that we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishnan. I think that lays out very significant fundamental strengths of Tamil Nadu. I'm going to, the important point, which often is a problem, is the lack of trust between government and industry in any country. And I think what you have changed in the mindset, and it's improving constantly, is a collaborative approach, which I think is really the key to ensure that as long as you get continuous feedback and you apply that feedback to action, I think it makes a great difference for creating a very business-friendly, wealth-generative, employment-creating environment. I'm going to request some of the members of the audience here to take some questions or share some thoughts.
Hello, thank you, Pranjal. I'm Richard Oldfield. I'm the Global Markets Leader for PwC, so responsible for everything we do in the market. My colleagues in India would tell you I'm probably India's #1 fan as I go around the world. I think one of the things, building on something that Ian said, that certainly has been a topic of conversation here and I see around the world, is this concept of sustainability and resilience. So I think the comments have been really good so far, but we stand at a really pivotal and interesting moment where geopolitics are going to change supply chains quite dramatically, and there are parts of the world all competing to participate in that supply chain shift, and so it's quite a competitive environment. And boardrooms, interestingly, 100% of the Fortune 500 recently stated that sustainability and climate change in particular was a board level issue, and would be a filter through which they were looking at investment decisions going forward. So for Tamil Nadu to really be effective in getting investment into the country, it really needs to make sure that it is thinking about how organizations can operate in a sustainable way with the lowest carbon footprint. But that, interestingly, question of what am I doing to the planet is now being added to more so by the question of what is the planet doing to me, which is the resilience point. And actually the Chennai City Partnership is an awesome world-leading example of how public and private sector can work together to really think about that adaptation issue. So I think thinking about the entire climate journey, resilience, and actually the infrastructure, the greening of the infrastructure across Tamil Nadu is really important when you think about the competitive positioning of the region.
When I spoke earlier, I specifically wanted to respond to a point that Maria made, and I think has been brought up again, which is on the decarbonization and the sustainable power. The minister made a point that more than 50% of our installed energy capacity is from green sources, from wind, solar, and other sources. We've been a pioneer in wind historically. For the last 3 decades, we've had significant wind capacities. Solar capacities are rising now. And every company which comes into Tamil Nadu now tells us that, can you assure us that the power we use is green power? And we are seriously working in that direction to make sure that round the clock, green power is made available. It's a real challenge. And I don't think it's been done yet. The storage technologies are not yet in place. But it is a challenge that we really want to take up and work towards. So I just wanted to assure this audience and any wider audience that sustainability and ensuring that green power is available is very, very high on our agenda. Thank you.
Maria, do you want to add something to the points that Richard made?
I think it just reinforced everything that I was discussing. The supply chain and the competitive advantage is super important. I've seen this with our current customers. They are looking for to look at their upstream of their supply chain and where everything is coming from. A lot of come from India and China and Latin America, where I am from, and these countries are going to be competing. So I think it's super important that Tamil Nadu is well positioned to respond to global companies that are requesting the information about emissions, the information about social matters, and everything that goes a little beyond the financial. I just want to say one quick thing, because my father-in-law is from Tamil Nadu, and I'm personally connected to the region, so just wanted to add.
So you're really the daughter-in-law of Tamil Nadu.
There you go.
So I would, I think you referred to energy, and Krishnan, that's very important, because while we talked about geopolitics of logistics and value chain, the geopolitics of energy is what we are listening to and living every second these days. The huge conversation about buying gas from Russia and not buying, and how do you want to rebalance your energy basket, I think that means that India has to, and Tamil Nadu can lead the way on geothermal energy, on wind energy, solar energy. It's perfectly placed for all these three types of new renewable energy. And I think I'm very happy that global investors are putting pressure on you for green energy. I think it's going to yield very good results for us. Bharat, you would have a question. So I'd also request you to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Bharat Kaushal. Lovely to be here. I head the Hitachi business in India region. And we have a big commitment already in Tamil Nadu, from digital businesses also to manufacturing business, more than 10,000 people. But going forward, I mean, more specifically on the manufacturing endeavor, green is redefining the landscape of new capacity building. And India's journey in the last 2-3 years, with the big digital advantage of showing digital with affordability and scale that no one's seen. I heard this morning that last year, 82 billion transactions, which is 60% of global transactions, financial transactions, happened in India. So that kind of extraordinary lead that India has taken, maybe it's only a state like Tamil Nadu that you fall back on to expect that affordability of green capacity building in capital good industry, where life cycle costs, OPEX and CAPEX balance, the partner ecosystem, and also what it does to the green efficacy from the design and process stage to the outcome stage, is something that, I was very encouraged to hear what happened here, what was discussed here, but I thought that's a point that I would maybe focus again, because that's what we are looking at too.
Would you like to respond, Krishnan?
I think in interesting ways, Tamil Nadu was ahead of the curve on green. And now we are under pressure saying that, we all want green power. And I think many people probably figure that this is one state which can deliver, and which is why the pressure is more on us. This is what expectations does. But it's not just about energy. It's also about water. It's also about other forms of pollution. And interestingly enough, thanks to local pressure very early on, and we had this discussion even this morning, we had to adopt to a zero liquid discharge mechanism across the state for various industries, including traditional industries like textiles and leather and so on, which added to the cost but made sure that the recycling got done. And today, it's turned out to be a big plus, because our industry can go around and say that we are fully compliant, we are green, we are energy efficient, all of that. So what was actually a higher cost, and there was a serious risk of industry moving out, traditional industries moving out of the state, turned out to be an advantage later in the way that it played out. So in that framework, I think sometimes, although we look at something as a higher cost element or a disadvantage to begin with, when you actually invest on it early, it turns out to be a significant advantage. And that's, I think, precisely the way we would look at the challenges that many of the businesses which are wanting to invest in Tamil Nadu, the kind of requests they make and what they ask us for in terms of these compliances. That's the way we actually look at it.
Thank you. Paul, would you like to add anything?
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned before green energy is a big advantage in Tamil Nadu. We have a solar farm. Between the state being pretty warm, right, and advanced manufacturing, normally you need good climate control. We have one of the best ROIs in the world in our solar farm in Tamil Nadu. But as always, there is also growing pains. So I very much appreciate that we can work together with you and synchronize how we take the next steps. We were talking about water supply, we're talking about recycling and so on, how we can implement it as well, that we have the full value chain of green energy, sustainability, and then circular economy as well, because we not only want to produce, but we also want to make sure that we have the sustainability across the full life cycle of the product. And especially in electronics, there's been quite a bit of conversation about what do you do with obsolescence. So we want to be a big partner in that as well, making sure that we bring from the manufacturing stage to the end of the product life cycle a sustainable way of manufacturing and logistics and treating the products once they are in consumer's hands.
Thank you, Paul. Ian, go ahead, please.
Yeah, maybe I think it's a really interesting point, though, particularly on sort of the circularity and the role of the government. I mean, we can talk about circularity, we can talk about traceability of supply chains. It sort of touches a little bit on what Maria was speaking about on earlier. But I think these are things that are key enablers that manufacturers are looking for. So if we create an environment where there are a regulatory environment, a policy environment that allows for the reclamation of goods, that allows for sort of recycling, that allows for remanufacturing, I think you'll see that there's a cost associated, but that's also where businesses are looking to move towards those environments. So if it exists, it's sort of the old adage, if you build it, they will come, but in this case, it really matters because circularity is so key to the future success. Companies are saying, if I'm not designing it for circularity, then I'm not going to make it at all. But we need to have an environment that allows us to actually execute on that. So I think it's a really important space.
Thank you. So I think we'll have to, we would like to close in 5 minutes, but please go ahead. Quick question.
Yeah, my name is Vikram. I'm the president of Tech Mahindra Europe, based in London. Can I just ask a question for a very...
I think maybe a mic would help. Can we get a mic across to him, please? Sorry for that.
Yeah, Krishnan, you made a point which I want to just highlight because which is very important for me, that you are building on what is already built. Because your administration has come in just now. Because whenever I talk to any of my customers in Europe, I say, why don't you go to India? The biggest problem is this. When the administration changes, policies are reversed, and sometimes retrospectively. And we have seen cases happen. I must compliment you for that, because that is a big message businesses from, at least in Europe, my markets want. Long-term commitment and the guarantee that policies are not changed. I must compliment you for what you said. I just want to highlight that, because you brought it out beautifully, that you built on what was already there.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. My minister is present here, and I don't think he'd mind my saying that. Mr. Anand Mahindra was actually present in a Global Investors Meet roadshow in Mumbai once, where I was speaking in 2015. Different government, different minister. And at that point, somebody asked me the same question. How do we know that policies won't change? And we said, look, as far as investors are concerned, in Tamil Nadu, nothing ever changes for them. The competition, the contestation, the political contestation between the two major political formations is only who is more investor-friendly, who is more business-friendly, and who can bring in more businesses into the state. So in that context, I don't think any company which is invested in Tamil Nadu and come in to do business has actually suffered because governments have changed. We've, if at all, taken it forward, and this is a compliment both to the present administration and to past administrations, and I'm sure the Honourable Minister will certainly endorse this.
Thank you so much. And I think that's predictability of policy is at the core of inviting any investment, not just foreign investment, but domestic investment. With this, I'd like to close, but also just flag one point that it's not just about hardware and manufacturing. You both mentioned about software. Tamil Nadu is one state which has its own blockchain policy. It has its own artificial intelligence policy at a state level, which tells you that the holistic approach to technology is very visible and active on the ground. With this, I'd like to thank all of you and hand it to Krishnan, and thank you for hosting us this afternoon. Okay, may I request Pooja to share a vote of thanks with all of us. Ms. Pooja Kulkarni is the MD and CEO of Guidance, the host for this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Pranjal, for an excellently moderated session, and thank you, Ian. It's a pleasure meeting you in person after so many sessions virtually, right? Maria, Krishnan sir, Paul, Barbara, thank you all so much for a very lively session. Thank you, Professor. And thank you to the Honorable Minister for his opening remarks and for setting the framework for this panel discussion. Tamil Nadu, we've had the privilege of being a co-chair of the WEF Hub this year. And for us, it has been a phenomenal learning process of what other countries have been doing, primarily in advanced manufacturing, how the state has enabled, and that is something that we look to really learn. We've interacted with the MES Turkey. I'm meeting up with Tulip Interfaces today, and these interactions, the connect with centers of excellence across the globe, the sharing, that is something that we really look forward to build upon this relation. And I hope that our SMEs are able to catch up with the large investors. That is again something that we think is crucial to building the entire ecosystem in advanced manufacturing. Yeah? That is what we look forward to take from this session, and thank you all for attending.